computer. Okay. Ready? Can you talk? Okay, hi, I've just hung up on Nick David. Well, that didn't mean to go that way. Oh, you're there. Okay, hang on. Maybe you just weren't on speakerphone. Okay. All right. Welcome to this mini little preview end of a MMAniac. Hi. Nick, are you there via the phone?
Yeah, I'm getting way worse audio from you, whatever you're doing on this end.
I think I'm just further away. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Look, it's already not a really clear audio signal. So if you're doing like a speakerphone, it's maybe do a headset.
Okay.
That might work.
All right, sure. Doing the headset. So your voice won't be able to necessarily be heard on this YouTube thing, but maybe if you need to pull my audio from it, we can do it. Okay, yeah, you keep pressing buttons, you and your key card. So UFC 202 is this Saturday, and it's going to be a different fight only because both of the fighters are able to prepare for each other, which was not really the case last time, as Diaz, of course, was coming off the beach in Cabo. McGregor was getting ready to make his lightweight debut against Rafael dos Anjos and try to unite the two belts, and one broken foot switched a lot of destinies in the UFC as a result when Dos Anjos had to pull out of the fight and Nate Diaz was installed with 11 days notice. So it's going to be a lot more interesting this time. I mean, it was a great fight last time. It won Fight of the Night honors, rightfully so. Pretty briefly briefly into the second round, still under 10 minutes long. But I've rewatched the fight. I rewatched it again today because I got into kind of a throwback Thursday of an argument with someone who I've never met online that was very similar to the argument that you and I had, or heated discussion rather, back at a previous episode of the podcast when discussing Conor McGregor's jiu-jitsu. True. Okay. Well, it wasn't. Yes. True. Thank you. Thank you for not saying fuck that guy. So this time, at least, McGregor has. I've watched a lot of the video. I haven't watched there's 2 episodes at the time of this video. There's 2 episodes of Embedded out. I've not yet watched those. I do know that McGregor, from the GQ article, which if you haven't read it, I suggest it. Maybe I'll retweet it. McGregor, he has spent $300,000 on this training camp. He's got a private gym built in Las Vegas. He's doing military-like training. He's got all these partners. Yes. Punch and crunch. Yeah, that's I think his open workout video. He had a private workout. It was just open to the media, and then there's an hour-long question and answer session, press conference. Um, as humble as he was in the defeat the first time, it's not that he's being arrogant this time, but he's sort of back to a semblance of really maybe a combination of the beginning McGregor that was very outspoken and in your face, trying to grab the attention and bring it to him, and the more subdued McGregor from after the fight. He's not as humble, but he is making subtle jabs, referring to Nate Diaz as boy, saying that he's going to toy with him. Still did make a second round knockout prediction. But are you okay? It sounds like you're rifling through your glove box. Oh, okay. I see you're home. Okay. Good. Right, and despite his being pulled from the UFC 200 card for not wanting to make the press rounds, he has done less press leading up to this. Yeah. Okay, well that you've kind of jettisoned into an area of my least favorite topic: conspiracy theories, such. Yeah, and the conspiracy theory that he pulled out of 200 because he just wanted more time to prepare for Diaz. It's kind of an interesting one, but at the same time, in the immediate aftermath of that, Dana White came out and said that his next fight would not be against Diaz. After he pulled out, it would be against Aldo, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the tide sort of changed after having the. I don't know why they would bother to fly all around, having private dinners with people just to go with the premeditated nature of it. But in any case, it's not a conspiracy theory that I subscribe to that he pulled, because in the lead up to UFC 200, he did have many reasons to pull out, including the being cage side for a death in Ireland and in the fight game, and also just what he was saying was making sense. Like all of the media rounds that he did, all the late night talk shows that he did the last time, when he should have been focused on his training, and not just because it was Diaz. It would have been the same thing in the same bookings had it been RDA as well. And this time around, he's not on Conan. He's not on Jimmy Fallon. He's not on Jimmy Kimmel. He wasn't on Jimmy Fallon before. Nate Diaz was. He was on Conan and Kimmel. And McGregor had his own private press thing. He had his own media scrum at his place. He did the GQ article, and really not much else. I know he was on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani this past week, or this past Monday, depending on when you're listening to this. But what he says makes sense. Why waste time with promoting when he should be focused on training, especially double down more so now that he's trying to avenge a loss. Oh, wasn't all the fight of the night bonuses or knockout bonuses in those fights? I mean, it okay. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this being. Um, I don't know that it will go longer than the last fight, but I feel like both guys are going to be completely different conditioning wise now that McGregor has had time to get used to the fighting and training at welterweight. I mean, he was two breakfasts McGregor after they made the opponent switch last time, and it takes a while for your body, your muscles to get used to competing at that weight. I mean, he was just trying to gain weight and he still came in under. It was like 169, but his coach Kavanaugh was on the Anakin Florian podcast, speaking that he says that his walking around weight is still similar to how it was as a featherweight. I think it's going to be different in how he trains and how it transpires on fight night without the cut weight. I mean, so will his agility be more improved than it was at 196 because he gassed as he did in the second round? Probably, but it's also going to be a whole different ballgame for Nate Diaz, too, now that he's got a full camp and he's back at a weight class that he has had 4 fights in prior as well. So, I mean, he's a bigger guy anyway. But, well, yeah. Now, you think there's no way it goes to a decision? I mean, we've seen big time heavyweights go to a decision. I mean, he beat Max Holloway by decision. Granted, that was 3-round fight, and it was almost because of the knee injury. But yeah, I don't know. I don't subscribe. I don't think that it will go to a decision as well. I think it's going to be. It's going to be kind of a violent end. So I don't know. I'm right. I guess if I wanted to be bold, I would bet round 3. I don't know. But, yeah, that would be my bet. Mm-hmm. Ooh, Nate Diaz hasn't had a lot of knockouts in the UFC or for a while. So, but I mean, he could have knocked him out before. McGregor was very dazed. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he got shot on. What are you gonna do? Turn it around, and it took over in a fairly major way. So I guess there's not too much else to say. I'd say check out the Bad Blood special. It's pretty well done with the whole timeline of how they were able to get there and put things in play. I'm trying to look ahead to the rest of the card, and it's there's some fights that I just don't know much about, even on the main card. But the co-main event, I know you have a lot of thoughts on because it's one that you were looking forward to. for quite some time. So why don't you lead the way on Anthony Johnson versus Glover Teixeira? No, it's a 3-round fight. Yeah. He is, yeah. His boxing should not be discounted. Teixeira's, that is, for sure. But it also shouldn't be discounted just how hard Anthony Johnson hit. So if he decides to, even as good as Teixeira's head and foot movement is, if Johnson decides to switch it up, the body that can open up the from the shoulders up and the chest and the head in a big way. And either way, I think if there's a likelihood of any fight being over in the first round, that's this fight. And I'm interested. I'm interested to see, and that's not just to say a Johnson knockout. I'm actually predicting Teixeira submission because I think that he's going to try to bait Johnson in with a striking game, and even as good as Johnson's wrestling is in his takedown defense, I think that something wild's going to happen, and he'll up against the fence, possibly in the clinch. Teixeira will try some slick move to take us back. He's certainly not going to do a Ryan Bader type desperation opening bell, badly shoot from halfway across the octagon in on his hips type of move. But yeah, I know. It usually does. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe punch and don't stop punching. Maybe you could just put it on the back of the t-shirts we already have. Next fight, Rick Story versus Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone in his third welterweight bout in a row, trying to possibly get into the top 10 in this division. Although he said, and this is something I'll ask you if you're buying into, but I think it's really a cry in the dark and would not happen, at least not next. But he says that if he wins, he's going to call out Eddie Alvarez, a guy that Donald Cerrone defeated when Alvarez first made his debut after coming over here with so much hype and so much money after leaving Bellator. Do you buy into that at all? Say Cerrone beats Story, and I'm kind of leaning that way. Do you think, like, should he stay at welterweight and keep moving up, even though there is sort of a logjam at that division at the top, both with fighters who are active and inactive, i.e., GSP and Nick Diaz coming off of a suspension, hasn't fought since Anderson Silva in at UFC. Shit, was that 182, 184? What do you think? Are you still there? I think I lost you. Well, we lost. No, are you there? Okay. Yeah, I think it's better. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, Alvarez has already called out the winner of McGregor Diaz, so he doesn't want fuck all to do with Cerrone. Of course. I know. Yeah. If you, yeah, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it kind of does if you think about it, because it did last time. Because had McGregor won, he certainly would have called out Robbie Lawler to have a more mega fight. And after McGregor pulled out, Lawler was offered to Nate Diaz, and he said no. He said that he wants to fight Conor McGregor because he knows that's much bigger of a money fight than UFC 201 ended up being. The anticlimactic Robbie Lawler gets the short end of the stick, and oh, guess what? He also lost his title. So I think there are some degree of title implications, only because they the UFC doesn't want to articulate a reality where titles don't mean as much as certain money fights, because then they're losing leverage. Then why do they have rankings? Why do they have champions at all? Why isn't it just fantasy matchup after fantasy matchup? But I still don't. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's also a much more talented fighter than Chael Sonnen, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah, you'll see imposters. I mean, there's are in the featherweight division. I mean, there's young guns coming up that have a huge fan base, and sure they haven't been as flamboyant and outspoken as McGregor, but if you look at the past week's Salt Lake card, Yair Rodriguez had a huge following of Mexicans that traveled to fucking Utah of all places, Salt Lake City, and and pretty much, and of course the Japanese fella whose name who calls everyone bitches, and it sounds like a 90s stock character from one of the scary movies of an Asian person is yeah, he was on the UFC. It wasn't called the ultimate. It wasn't called Tough Tokyo, but it was the Road to Japan or something. But I want to say his name's Hiroki, but I could be completely wrong. Anyway, but there are people who are trying to emulate that style, and it's not really matching up for them. It's almost like with some of the ways that McGregor went to the top, it wasn't just by politely calling people out or talking shit on the microphone. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but could we see more of the jumping out of the cage and getting in people's faces like he did with Aldo in Boston? I don't know, but that's the type of stuff like you can't just repeat. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like even watching the Bad Blood thing, I feel like there should have been subtitles when Nate Diaz is speaking sometimes because it's very muttered, it's very low, it's kind of tough to understand, much less so than an Irish accent. But that being said, it's just the nature of the fight game as it progresses. I guess in terms of promotional things, fighters may not be getting paid for the promotional obligations, but I feel like based on the last two Conor McGregor, actually go back to the last three because he also had a pretty intense. Well, he had a very intense campaign when he originally thought it was going to be against Aldo, and he had a little still last minute one to do when it became Mendez, and then of course Aldo all over again, and RDA/Nick, and he's done a little something different every time in his approach to the promotional aspect of it. But in terms of actual obligations to certain television programs, it's been greatly reduced, at least for McGregor this time around. And I think that is as a result of the falling out that they had on the road to UFC 200. That's just my thoughts. But I feel like I just distracted myself from other things to speak about. I feel like I just distracted myself about other things. All right, so there's two more fights on the main card, including the return of Tim Means, he of the tainted supplement, 6-month suspension after he came out of his main event spot against Cowboy Cerrone back in Pittsburgh 6 months ago. I don't know too much about the opponent he's facing, Sabah Homasi, who is making his UFC debut. He does have an 11-5 record, significantly less fights than the 25-7-1 Dirty Bird Tim Means, but coming in as a knockout guy with very comparable reach as Means, just a 1-inch difference on both the arms shorter, the legs longer. So, well, I don't know. The last time Tim Means fought was on the undercard of Namajunas versus Van Sant when he sent John Doomsday Howard out of the UFC for the most recent time, potentially forever. And so essentially, fought Tim Means. Oh, really? Oh, like since then, in the last few months? Interesting point about Doomsday. After leaving the UFC, he was diagnosed, and this is a kind of a strange case, but there's articles about there. He was diagnosed as an adult. I believe he's older than I am. He's like 35 or 36. Diagnosed with as being on the autism spectrum. Isn't that it's kind of interesting that would happen to someone so late in life. But he is out there on the regional circuit. He did fight in World Series of Fighting a few weeks back, which I feel like I'm never in. Yeah, since being cut in the UFC after the Namajunas Van Sant in the lead up to UFC 194. Essentially the first UFC live event I went to. But so Means Homasi, and I know nothing about Hyung-Yu Lim and Mike Perry, except I believe Mike Perry is also making his UFC debut. And Hyun-Yu Lim is from South Korea and may have fought in the South Korea card a few months back, but I got up at 5 a.m. and remember very little about that evening, aside from the main event, Gegard Mousasi losing a close decision to Benson Henderson in his final UFC appearance. So the prelims do have some interesting fights, including an undercard bout of SBG against Diaz's Scrap Pack in Artem Lobov, the runner-up on the Team McGregor Ultimate Fighter, versus the debuting American Chris Avila. I don't know how you pronounce it, but Chris Avila has a pretty significant reach advantage, 73 inches to 66 of nice and flowy Artem, but Artem is a little bit taller. I don't know what to think, because I feel like Artem Lobov has not performed well in the UFC since coming aboard, since that Ultimate Fighter finale. He's fought very tentatively. I mean, the first fight, he was just completely dominated by the jiu-jitsu of the eventual winner and now missing person, Ryan Hall. I mean, he's not actually a missing person, but he hasn't been seen since then. I feel like I saw him booked on something in the future. I don't know if it got scrapped or if it's just the next event coming up, but it's a little bit weird that they, I mean, I know he was eliminated from the show and basically just got the spot in the finals because someone else lied on their green card, but it does seem a little bit strange that previous Ultimate Fighter winner has essentially been nowhere to be found. Well, this could be it. This could be the final fight if Artem doesn't win. I feel he's on the same training camp schedule as McGregor. Theoretically, iron sharpens iron. He might be getting a piece of that $300 training camp just by being a cog in the machine of it for Conor. But I know nothing about Chris Avila. I'm just going to pick Artem based on the desperation and the fact that if he doesn't win, he's almost certainly going to be cut, although he is an exciting fighter, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be sticking around. I mean, Ben Saunders got cut coming off of a win just for not getting back to them on time. So also worth noting, Cody Garbrandt, no love, coming off of his knockout of Thomas Almeida against, let me pronounce his name correctly, Takeya Mizugaki, who hasn't, yeah. So I'm pretty excited for that. That's the FS1 main event on the 8 p.m. broadcast. And I mean, Mizugaki, obviously very experienced. He's got a lot of fights. He's got 32 fights professionally compared to Garbrandt's 9. But Garbrandt still undefeated. He's got that swagger. He's been verbally sparring back and forth with the champion Dominic Cruz. Now he's going up against the guy that Cruz dispatched with punches, a rarity, in his comeback fight. So I think in the back of my head, Garbrandt is, he wants to match that, or he wants to beat that. He wants to come in, comes in under 45 seconds. Yeah. Yeah. So are you going with Garbrandt, or are you going with? Wait. It seems like it's already been verbally agreed upon. I mean, it was kind of saying that, let him beat some people, let him prove himself a little bit more in the division. But I think he's kind of not good. But he knows that there's something there. There's some there's legit beef. I mean, maybe he's playing it into it a little bit, but he knows he's not going to get the super fight with Conor McGregor. He knows he's not going to get the super fight with Demetrius Johnson, because those are both fights that those guys don't have a lot of interest in. They would mostly benefit that of Cruz. Since got this entire season of the Ultimate Fighter and champions from other promotions fighting for the right to oppose him for his UFC flyweight belt, he's not going to jump up to fight a guy that knocked him around from pillar to post last time they fought, suplexing him 3 times. And McGregor is certainly not. If he's going to go down to featherweight, he's going to defend the title first. He's not going to be doing a super fight with the bantamweight champion. I mean, that's what I assume. But I think he's not even in that much of a rush to go down to featherweight. I think if he doesn't, now what about? Do you think what is the more likely if McGregor were to win? And I keep going back to this. If McGregor were to win, who do you call out if you're him? Do you call out anyone? But I think it's different. Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit different. Talking about Woodley. Yeah. He didn't call him out. Come on. It was proposed, but yeah. I see what you're saying, but I'm saying, would it suit Conor McGregor because he's at a different point? Okay, he's the featherweight champion. He doesn't have to call anyone out because when he goes back down to featherweight, he has an opponent already due to the fact that there's an interim champion there, barring any unforeseen circumstances or an injury to Jose Aldo. However, do you think that there's more money and more likelihood of a victory in calling out the welterweight champion, Tyron Woodley, or the lightweight champion, Eddie Alvarez, both who don't have a fight booked, and neither of them are going to be a big money guy? I mean, honestly, I think it's actually probably a moot point because if McGregor wins, yeah, I agree. Okay, he's a big guy. Well, here's the thing. You say, and you said it before, and I realize I asked the question, and my answer would be neither of them as well. But there's no way that if he wins this fight with Nate Diaz, and they're both fairly uninjured, like no major injuries, I think the next fight is against Nate Diaz if he wins. No, you what? I. Why would they put any time between settling it? It would be a trilogy. It would be a. But it, Not Jose. Jose barely defended it when he was champion. Over if you look at the timeline and the actual title, eh, he was not fighting in Brazil a lot. I think is more the case. But uh, Nate Diaz, there, I think with the trilogy fight would be the next one. But we'll see, and we may not see because if he doesn't win, there's no and that is what brings me to the discussion that I hate. But the elephant in the room, and the reason that this fight is going to have to be watched so closely is there is and I'm not talking about someone paying him off or fixing the fight at all, but Nate Diaz, who has already come out and said that he only wants to fight if it's a big name, big money opponent from now on after this. Like he believes he's at that level. He's earned his spot that he's always thought he's deserved, but he's there now. There is way more incentive and money for him to make by losing this fight than there would be in victory. And and that's the but uh, yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not saying that he's going to lose. Yeah. Yeah. New ownership post Zuffa. It's post Zuffa UFC. Hey, that had nothing to do with it. Hey, what happened happened. Yes. Uh, so that's one thing that I think will be. I'm almost preparing for that to happen because everyone was muttering similar shit before, in which I definitely don't describe it. If you read, and I suggest it to anyone, it's available fairly inexpensively on Kindle. Big John McCarthy's book. He's actually, I don't know if he's been assigned the refereeing duty. Sometimes they announce it in advance. Sometimes they do not. I haven't seen any official announcement, but he's very good at knowing subtleties of if a fight is fixed. Now, I will say that if you're going to fix fight, it's probably going to be a submission ending, and I think it will raise more than a couple eyebrows if McGregor is submitting Diaz. McGregor does have one submission victory on his record, but it was almost like by accident. Yeah. Yeah. Well, everyone does get rich. Yeah. Well, hopefully, whatever. We'll see. I hope it's just a great fight. Um, maybe it goes to decision so that people will see that it's not necessarily gonna be. That's now. Now that's all I'm gonna be thinking about. It's like a black cloud over my head. But I mean, McGregor is the betting favorite, so yeah, he is. Well, maybe it's. I do. I wonder that myself as well. I would like to watch a documentary about odds makers, because are these guys just watching fights all day? I mean, a lot of the times they're watching what other people are betting too. So if you could make a max bet uh, and change the line in many casinos because they'll think that you know something and they're all paranoid or whatever. Well, uh, anything else worth noting about the other prelims? Not really. Well, Neil Magny versus Lorenz Larkin should be a good fight. That's the UFC Fight Pass early prelim featured bout. So yeah, that'd be good. I've become a big Magny fan in the last year or two. I mean, I feel like I've seen him fight 11 times. Really, the only time he lost was getting dominated by Damian Maia, and that's not an uncommon occurrence when Damian Maia is in there. I mean, I guess worth noting, staying in the welterweight division, is that Dana White came out today and pretty much said that despite the multiple call-outs and despite the immediately post 201 interview where Tyron kind of punked Stephen Wonderboy Thompson directly and said, "Hey, you wanted to fight Robbie Lawler? You'll get that chance. I wanted the big money fights." It looks like it will be Wonderboy. Hasn't been introduced, hasn't been officially announced yet. But what do you think of that? And do you think that the winner of Condit Maya gets the shot at the winner of that next fight? Yeah. Yeah. And who do you think the winner of Maya and Condit will be? It's so different. Mm. But did he fight at middleweight for it against Silva? Mm. Yeah. Twice. Yeah. Okay. And his fight with Condit is a 5 rounder too. So there's something to be said for that. Like Condit could, it may not be like the last 3 Damian Maia fights where if you were watching from the nosebleed seats, looks like there's just one guy stumbling around the cage because he's just on his back the entire time. But I don't know. I still see Maia winning through submission because of that, but you can't help but want them to duke it out on their feet and see how that plays out. But I think Maia's path to victory, he has to play it smart, and that is not standing and trading with one of the most diverse strikers in the entire division, never mind the entire UFC. But how exciting and bizarre would be the the pairing of if Wonderboy were to win the championship if he were to face Maia. I don't know. Because Wonder Boy is an expert at controlling distance. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, let's wrap it up. That was the last fight I had anything really to say about. Anyhow, so enjoy the fights this weekend. Enjoy the editing process of putting this together. Yeah, maybe we'll just check in from a Buffalo Wild Wings parking lot in the very early hours of August 21st. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for downloading. See you later.